Hello everyone, welcome to Dr. Quack's House Calls. Today is a special episode because this is dedicated to you, the viewer. This is my Q&A session, so without further ado, I'm going to go into some questions here. This comes from one of my friends. His name is Rambo, and I have actually 3 questions from him. The first one involves professional wrestling. Should you have a gimmick going into your first match, or is it better to be completely neutral? I will tell you that I think a lot of times when you're entering the business, when you finish school and you have, finished your training, that it is better to go in as a nobody. I did it in my career. My very first gimmick was known as Davey Kemp. I was a no-name jobber, pin me, pay me. That was pretty much my job. It was me learning the business before I really got myself established. I did it mainly for 3 years. I got to wrestle, against guys that were number 1 contenders and champions and things like that, and did the job. Nothing wrong with that. I got to learn about how to set up the ring, work security, be pretty much a helping hand in learning the variety of things that are involved in the professional wrestling business. But yeah, I think it's best to do it that way. I mean, if you have a gimmick, and this is a big no-no that a lot of promoters will tell you, you don't win your first match. I have seen people win their first match, and their egos have gone throughout the roof. They think they're the greatest thing in the world, when in reality, you just got picked by a booker to go over. Be humble. Number 2. This is involving the promo world. When trying to film, if I don't have a suitable background, should I use anything or should just something in general? When it comes to backgrounds, okay, you look at it. Backgrounds, right? Combat veteran, it kind of matches. American, right? You see how that works. When you have a background, a lot of people get pissed at this. They go, it should only matter on your words when you're cutting the promo. It should if you're doing this on radio. If you're filming, if you're on screen, guess what? They're looking at all this behind me. They're looking at this shirt. They're looking at your facial features. They're looking at everything. So the big thing on that is you want it all to match. You don't want to have a dirty garage or a dirty living room and you're cutting a promo and you're trying to be something that is not grungy. You want to have it match. It just makes more sense that way. Green screens, I have no problems with. Some people do. I don't have a problem with them. I think green screens, if you use them correctly, can really work well for you. That's a big thing on that. Let's go to number 3. This one here, and this is our third and final one from our friend Rambo. If I'm trying to negotiate price and it doesn't seem like they will go close enough to what I'm looking for, should I walk out or just threaten to walk? I will tell you this, when it comes to pricing, you have to do your homework. It's very important. You want to come out there and make sure that you're getting the right price for the best value you can get. You can also be unrealistic. This is also a big thing. I said in my previous videos, if you're looking at a brand new Camry and only trying to spend $10,000, you're way off. You have to understand, car business is a profitable business. It's not a non-profit organization. They're not out to give away the house and just make sure that, you get a new car for cheap. But there's also the lines there. They're being competitive because they got to compete against other dealerships, other brands, and everything else. So, I mean, you want to, make sure it's close to what you get, and you want to feel comfortable with what you're getting. Very big thing here. When you're at a dealership, they will give you that paper that they're going to show you the price on. They're like, can I have this? And sometimes they may say no. Just know that. They're going to give you some excuses. But some of them will. They're like, here, shop it around. Because they know if they give it to you to shop it around, I'm going to tell you two things will happen. One, you're either A, going to have a very tough time beating that price because they're giving you the very best price they can. Or B, you might find that dealership that might beat it by $300, $300 to $500. And if that makes you really happy, then fine. But, that may be on the other dealership. They might be towards the end of the month. They might, need to hit a number so they can get their money from their manufacturer and not get in trouble with their bosses. So they might just do that just to sell the farm, just to make sure they make numbers. You might get away with that, but there's no guarantee. And even that offer you give on that car, especially if it's a used car, remember, that's the only one around. Somebody else might come in 5 minutes later and buy it. A new car, you might be able to get away with it. But believe me, they're pricing it against other dealerships that are involved that sell the same manufacturer. And now we're going to move on to number 4. This question comes from my friend Steph. She asks, what's my favorite book? And I will tell you, I don't read a lot. I don't. I didn't read a lot as a kid. I read more as an adult when I was deployed. Probably some of my favorite books are mostly Stephen King books. I would definitely go with that. Carrie being one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I actually went and said this. I said that it was better than the movie, and I love the movie. If you know me, I watch a boatload of movies, but I love that book. Desperation was definitely another one. Cat's Eye, that was another one there. But there was another book, actually two of them, that really got me intrigued here. And I always love like the creepy and the weird and the bizarre. There was a book I read in 7th grade. It was called Maniac McGee. That was a real wild book to me that I will never forget. I still actually have a copy of it. I actually went and bought a copy of that one. And another one named after me, which I got to read it on deployment. It was called Jeremiah the Terrorist Prophet. That there, like I said, if you like these bizarre, who done it, why they do it, that is definitely one to read. Let's go on to number 5. Number 5 is from my friend Joe, and he asks, what got you into pro wrestling? And I can tell you from a very young age, professional wrestling was my life. I was about 4 years old. My grandfather, he sat me on his knee, and we turned on and watched a match between Don Morocco and Jimmy Superfly Snuka in the steel cage. I can remember this. I was very young, but I can remember after this match, he looked at me and said,
"You're going to do this when you get older."
And you didn't tell Grandpa no. So from that point until 1999, you could say I was studying the business little by little. I was learning stuff that I was reading in books, that I was, reading and watching on TV. And there was things like that really taught me, about the business a little bit until I got to school. And then, of course, I learned more. Wrestling school, you learn terminology more. You learn about how to do things in ring. You learn how to do things outside of the ring throughout your career. But really, it was my grandfather. I didn't have a huge passion for it. It wasn't like it was my love, originally. It was my grandfather. He was the one that wanted me to do this, so I did it. I learned later to grow, in love with it. Trust me, it hit my heart. It's still there. But yeah, it was my grandfather. Let's move on to number 6. Number 6 comes from a friend of mine named Amanda. And she asks, how do you deal with depression? And I got to tell you, depression is a very hard thing to deal with. It really is. Whether it was PTSD or it's just regular depression. Sometimes it's a traumatic event. Sometimes life, happens and it gets you down, and sometimes it just happens out of nowhere. I will tell you the best way to deal with depression is to do things that keep your mind off of it. That is probably the best answer I can give. You have to find hobbies. You have to maybe even take a walk, exercise, hit a punching bag. Sometimes that aggression will come out of you. Also, sometimes sleeping. Sometimes you can get so down and bogged that if you take a nap, take an hour or two nap. Sometimes that will snap you out of it. There's a lot of things that can do it. Medications as well. That's something you would have to talk to your primary care physician about. Personal note on this, I don't like medications. I've never liked medications. I've always believed that you don't take them unless you absolutely have to. When it came to medications for me, a lot of times it changed my state of mind to a place where I didn't like it for many reasons. It could have been good or bad. I just did not go with it. I mean, that's something that every person has to make their choice, and they talk with their primary care physician. That is something I will definitely say. Let's move on to number 7. Number 7 comes from Renee, and she asks, can you have a successful relationship with someone you've met on social media? I will tell you that yes, you can. There's actually, a lot of ways to meet someone, in person or online. I believe that you can do it many different ways. A lot of times, it's all going to depend on compatibility. That's going to be one of the big things. I'm actually going to do an episode later on that. So stay tuned for that. My next question here comes from my friend Josh. He's actually got a couple of questions here that I really want to answer. First one goes, when do you think in your mind that professional wrestling has started to decline? Not getting its views, and not just from the WWE, but AEW and Impact. I believe that pro wrestling hit its decline about 2006, 2007. That really 2007 I would go with, because a lot of reasons. I mean, you had your Attitude Era in the 90s. Everybody loved them. Rock and Stone Cold. You had your Ruthless Aggression era, where people, were building up. You had your John Cena's, you had your Kurt Angles and such, Eddie Guerrero's, all that. Once that era ended, I felt like a lot of things just went away. I felt, because ECW just came around. They were there, I think, 06, 07. We're just there maybe a year. And Vince McMahon put out this watered-down version of it. There weren't the ECW originals, outside of the first year. You had the Sandman, who came out occasionally. You had Sabu and others that first year, but then they got pretty much... So, yeah, after that, and plus that year, Chris Benoit died, and Chris Benoit was my favorite wrestler. For me, that was when the beginning of the end happened with professional wrestling. It really killed the business, in my opinion. I know we're not getting into what he did, if you believe he did or didn't do it, but for that moment, for me, that's what really just kind of killed things slowly to the point where it is today, where I just, it's hard to watch the product. He also asks here, I'm sure you have heard, do you think the E will be better off with Endeavor now that or do you think they need Vince? Sorry, pretty much. Do I think they're going to do good with Endeavor? Yes, because Endeavor owns the UFC. I mean, I think that's going to be a boost for them on that side, being on a national platform, which WWE is trying to do anyways, because half their pay-per-views are overseas. The United States is no longer the big place to run wrestling promotions. That's why you've seen AEW go to London. I mean, they realize the market here in America for professional wrestling is dying down. Most people don't like it. It's not like the Attitude Era where people used to talk about it all the time. I believe that they will hire Vince at some point. I feel it. As long as he's still alive, I would say there's a high chance on it. Vince is an incredible mind. He's an incredible genius. He's done this for, 50 years? The man knows what he's talking about. I think they might use him as a consultant. I don't know if they put him in any sort of managerial position, some sort of power position, you might say. I don't think that's going to happen. And he's got one more question here. What do you think? Who do you think this season? Who is the dark horse in the NFL? A team you would not expect to make a playoff run. And it's funny because they ended up beating the Kansas City Chiefs this week, and I'm talking about the Detroit Lions. Over the offseason, I have been saying this, they picked up a lot of offensive weapons. They picked up some good tight ends, some good wide receivers. They got a solid offensive line. I do feel like they're going to be a team that's going to make the playoffs, and they might make a long run. They might go all the way to the Super Bowl. That's possible, but who knows? I think the odds are they could win the division. Outside of Green Bay, from what I saw this weekend, I think the NFC South, they have a good chance. I think they're going to be highly competitive, and they might pull some games. I mean, we're going to see what happens with all that, but I think the Detroit Lions is actually the team that might make the playoffs and might make a long run. It's very possible. And my final question, this one also came from Steph. I wanted to answer this last because I wanted to talk about it. Who do you think will be in the general election for President of the United States? And let me tell you, this is the way I see the presidential election. And everybody's got an opinion, so I'm going to give mine. If you got yours on any of these, by all means, write them in the comments below. You have Vivek Ramaswamy, Governor DeSantis, right? And you have President Trump, former President Trump, right? Donald Trump leading the national polls big time on the Republican side. They think that he can beat Joe Biden. Nikki Haley's in there. I honestly don't consider Nikki Haley a threat to even becoming a Republican nominee. If she ran, it would be an independent nominee. Ramaswamy is actually one that I am high on. I like what he has to say. I think he handles the pressure of interviews with media, whether it be the liberal media or the conservative media. He handles it well. I think he stays true to his form. He sticks to what he wants to he sticks to his guns on policy that he wants to do. DeSantis, to me, is wishy-washy. I don't really like what he has to say. I can see it in his body language that he hates talking about Trump, which I get. That's everybody, it seems like. Except Donald Trump. But, yeah, Donald Trump, I think, is the odds-on favorite. Unless something happens, where they take him out of the election or whatever, I would say he's probably going to be the Republican nominee. That's just the way it's going to be. The other side, they're talking about Joe Biden, right? And they're talking about his age and might have a real malfunction over there with his brain. Mitch McConnell might have a Mitch McConnell syndrome, where he might just blank out for 30 seconds. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to do that too long. But they're worried about that. Gavin Newsom is out there. Unless he's not able to compete talking about Biden, Gavin Newsom, you might as well forget about. They're talking about they want Kamala Harris to be the president in this run and maybe have somebody else be a vice president or possibly Joe Biden be the vice president this time. She doesn't have high approval ratings. She hasn't done a lot. And that's why I really feel like they're all talking it's going to be the Trump-Biden. Okay? But it might not, because somehow, let's say they take each other out. One goes out for medical reasons, one goes out for, the 14th Amendment reasons. Who would you vote for then? For me, it's Ramaswamy. I would definitely go there. I think he's better than DeSantis. I think he's better than Haley, and I think he's better than the rest of them. That's me. That's my opinion. Thank you all for all the questions, for everybody that got them in here. If you have more questions, I'll answer them definitely on a later show. Or if you have a topic you want me to cover, let me know. But my next show is going to be on dating, the dating process. I'm going to give you some tips, and we'll see if they work for you. Let me know. Till next time, this is the Dr. Quack House Calls.